everyone, Terminally Nerdy here, with a bit of a different sort of video. As you can see, everything's kind of angled, but that's because of where I had to put my camera. So, yay, angles. I'm looking at the screen, you're not supposed to do that. I'm a professional. Anyway, so if you can tell by the title of the video, I want to talk about why the idea that narrative tournaments for Warhammer is a good idea. This was inspired by a Twitter thread by a gentleman by the name of Bitshammer. I will put a link to the thread in the description box. Go check it out down there. And he had done this thread about things that he thinks Games Workshop could do better. And I agree with most of his points, but one of the things he mentioned was the idea that there should be narrative tournaments in addition to the regular competitive tournaments. And I agree with that. So, to explain my reasoning and also why it works, we need to go back in time. Some of you may not be aware of this, but there was a trading card game. It is now a living card game by Fantasy Flight Games, but prior to that, it was a card game called Legend of the Five Rings. It came out when I was in high school, and I played it for a couple of years, and one of the big things was the narrative of the game was impacted by tournaments. So, like many collectible card games, you built a deck of cards, you would go out and you'd play, have tournaments, all that kind of stuff, just like Magic the Gathering. However, if you've never played Magic the Gathering, you may not be aware that Magic the Gathering has no sort of factions or anything. There are 5 colors in Magic, and while the narrative has factions like Phyrexia, and has characters like the Crew of the Weatherlight and all this shit, all the Planeswalkers, the players themselves aren't controlling those people in the sense that you aren't Chandra, and you're not repping Phyrexia. Like, if you play a black deck in MTG, even if every card in the deck is Phyrexian, you are not repping Phyrexia. Where Legend of the Five Rings was different was your deck was built inside of a clan. And that clan dictated win conditions, that clan dictated special abilities. Clan cards were unique. So, for instance, I played Crane Clan. But there was like Spider Clan, and Lion, and Scorpion, and Snake, and all these different clans. And it was also samurai, ninjas, that kind of thing, like fantasy, Asian-themed game. And what would happen is, when you went to tournaments, you would obviously register your deck, but you would register what clan you were, because that was the deck you were going to play. So if you were Crane Clan, you'd bring a Crane deck. Your deck box would actually have a special ability printed on it. One of your, I think it was like locations. It's been ages since I touched the game. And you could use that ability to play the game. So like Crane, for instance, was really big into winning by honor points. You would generate honor and win that way. Whereas another clan might be military victory, where they would take all your provinces, that sort of thing. In that way, the game was very different from Magic the Gathering. And because of this, and because of the clan system, they could change the narrative based on tournament results. So if, over the course of 6 months or a year, if, say, Scorpion Clan kept winning tournaments, that would mean that when the next big update came out, and the next set came out, like the next expansion, all of a sudden, if Crane Clan kept losing, they might lose heroes. Characters might be gone. Because Crane Clan would have a set of unique heroes. Well, the next expansion, none of those heroes came back because they all died. Because Scorpion Clan killed them. Shit like that. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is if you're hearing this and going, well, Factions sounds very similar to a miniatures game, you'd be right. In Warhammer, you're not playing like generic Army A. You're playing Cities of Sigmar. You're playing Space Marines. Hell, in Space Marines, you're playing specific chapters like Black Templars, Ultramarines, Salamanders. In Chaos Space Marines, you're repping specific gods. In Cities of Sigmar, you're repping specific cities like Tempest Eye or Halahart. In Caradhran Overlords, the army I'm looking at for Age of Sigmar, and there will be a video later, a standard nerds letter, just a reference, when I get my order of Caradhran Overlords. There's multiple Skyholds. So, if Games Workshop put out tournaments that were like, hey, we're going to do a series of tournaments And the armies and the factions that win those tournaments will now affect the next, update, the next General's Handbook, the next set of scenario missions, whatever, the next bit of Black Library fluff, or the next bit of timeline advancement. That would be a way to get people like me into tournaments. Because a straight competitive tournament, I'm not going. I'm not a tournament player. I have no interest in facing off with people in a pure tournament setting. I tried tournaments back when I was playing War Machine. I didn't like it. It's not my thing. Meh. I'm a casual player and a narrative player. So if you sat down and said, hey, you go to this tournament and you win with Caradron Overlords, and then they become much more important to the narrative of Age of Sigmar, I'd be much more interested. And I imagine some of the tournament players might be willing to try different armies. If they're like, well, I hate Space Marines, but Space Marines are the meta, so I'm going to play Space Marines, but I don't like Space Marines. And you sit down and say, hey, if your particular army that you like wins here, they get a much more focus in the narrative. Or, let's say you're playing Chaos Space Marines, and a bunch of people play through these narrative tournaments, and Chaos Space Marines win a whole bunch. Well, maybe because they won, and let's say they kept beating the shit out of regular Space Marine players, Robuto dies? Question mark? Like, all of a sudden, you're giving stakes in the narrative, in the lore. You're letting the players impact that lore while also still having a competitive style tournament. You're meshing. And I mean, Warhammer already kind of works this way. Even when you look at like the General's Handbook stuff, or when I watch battle reports, I notice that a lot of the stuff is stop rituals, collect magical artifacts, collect places of power, go steal, intelligence from the enemy, go protect a specific base. Like, they've already baked in narrative elements to the scenarios that you play. You could string those together in a tournament setting and make an actual tournament. You could even do allies. Like, okay, the fucking Age of Sigmar is already built in, Order, Death, Destruction, and I forget what the other one is. There's 4, grand alliances. So all Order players would work together effectively. All Destruction players would work together, etc. Chaos, that was the other one. There's Order, Chaos, Destruction, and Death. So, they could even structure the tournaments where, we're not going to put an Order player against another Order player. We're going to put Order players against this group. We're going to play these against this group, etc., and, bracket it that way. There's a lot of different ways you could do it, and it would be much more engaging. And like I said, a company did this. Legend of the Five Rings ran from the 90s up until 2015 before it got bought by Fantasy Flight Games. And up until that point, for sure, tournaments affected narrative. A collectible card game did this years ago. Games Workshop could absolutely do it. They just need to want to do it. And I think it'd be worthwhile, personally. And it would get me more interested in tournament play. But hey, why don't you let me know what you think about the idea of narrative tournaments in Warhammer or any miniatures game? Do you want to see Mantic do it? Do you want to see, Malifaux do it? Do you want to see any of these companies do this to allow players to directly impact the game world and the game story going forward? Just leave a comment, hit that like button, and share this. And if you like stuff like this, my weird little ponderings on different stuff like this, let me know, and I might do more of them. This was, just an off-the-cuff, non-scripted thing. And again, thanks Bitshammer for the inspiration. You got me to make a video. Woohoo! And again, like I said, there will be a Nerds letter in the coming weeks once I get my Caradron Overlords. I've still got 2 Gunpla that I want to put together at some point, but I haven't yet. Oh, and I solved the shelf problem. I'll go over how I did that one, too. But hey, be kind to each other, stay nerdy, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.